Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Good.
Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. My name is Tiffany Esposito. I'm the CEO of the Bonita Springs Chamber of Commerce, and we are the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers. We really appreciate you taking the time with us today. We'll go around and do some introductions, and then we have a few questions for you. We are recording this interview, and we're recording all of the interviews, and we intend to post them on our website and on our social media pages. So the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers is a group of 7 chambers of commerce representing 6,000 businesses and about 300,000 residents and constituents. We'll go around real quick and just introduce ourselves. So if we'll go Colleen, Donna, John, Dave, Jenna, Jackie.
Good morning.
You guys are on my
There they are.
Yeah. Thank you for being here today. My name is Colleen DePasquale, and I'm with the Greater Fort Myers Chamber of Commerce.
Nice to meet you, Jay.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for being here. My name is Donna Germain. I'm the President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Cape Coral.
Morning.
Hi, I'm Jenna Bazzacco Forrester. I'm the Director of Government Relations at the Greater Naples Chamber.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us today. My name is John Lai. I'm the President and CEO of the San Miguel Captiva Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning.
Morning, Dave Miller, Chamber of Southwest Florida. Nice to have you.
Oh, there you are. Good morning.
Good morning, Jackie Lezak, President, Executive Director of the Fort Myers Beach Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we'll get right into the questions. And the first one is just, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Daniel Kowal, and as you know, I'm running for District 19 here in Southwest Florida to represent the people of Southwest Florida and Washington, D.C. I want to be their voice, an uninterrupted voice, and I think that's what's important. Basically, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I was born in 1966, right outside the city of Pittsburgh. Grew up on the banks of the Ohio River in a town called Ambridge, which is actually named after American Bridge because we lived amongst the steel mill. That's kind of how we grew up there. That's how powerful the industry was. And that's why I know business and industry is very important for a community. Because I grew up at a time that we had that major industry in that city, and it fueled all of us. It fed us, it housed us, so important. But then in the 80s, when I went to high school, things changed. We saw a lot of foreign steel coming in from Japan and China, and it decimated the market. And I watched my town and the people around me suffer. And that was all caused by allowing all these influx of different products and things coming into the country that were unregulated. They weren't, and just they made it cheaper. They made it cheap. It didn't last. We had issues with the steel coming in. It rusted out. It wasn't as good as the American made stuff, but we still bought it. And I had to watch the industry die before my own eyes. And that's why the only option I had coming out of high school, I joined the United States Army. And I served our country just like my predecessor, my grandfathers and uncles before me all served. Actually, my grandmother in World War II worked at the Hussey Copper and Tin Mill, making bullets for the war effort. So she went to the mill and worked all day, came home and raised 3 children. One of them was my father. So I know business and industry is extremely important. And that's why I want to go to Washington, D.C., because the less we have a Washington, D.C. interference with business, the better you have off as a business so you continue working and doing what you already know how to do.
Great. So you touched on this a little bit, but what prompted you to run for office?
Well, I've been here in Southwest Florida. This is my 18th year now. I was a veteran, and I'm a career law enforcement officer. I still work here for the last 18 years for the sheriff's office here in Collier County. Before it was Sheriff Hunter, now it's Ramboss. And I love living in here. I love living here. It's a beautiful place to live. But over the past decade, I've watched the people go to Washington, D.C. that have been representing us. And I hate to say it, and I'm sad to say it, that I was not proud of some of the people that we sent there. And in over 10 years, I think we've had 5 different representatives. So I think Southwest Florida deserves better than that. I think Southwest Florida should be proud of who they send to Washington, D.C., and they should be proud to say the name that represents them in public. But I don't think we've had that over the past 10 years. And I'm a year and a half from retiring from law enforcement. I worked as a federal agent in Washington, D.C. when I got out of the Army. I've had a long career in law enforcement. But then I kind of look back and I says, you know what? Between me and my wife, we have 6 children. 3 boys and 3 girls. And I got to do what I can so we don't leave this country. In the direction it's going right now, I think we need to start sending patriots back to Washington, D.C. that are going to carry the voice, lock and step of the people they represent, not the people that influence them or the people that put them there. So I think that's who I am. And that's why I've decided to do this late in my life.
Thank you. What makes you qualified to represent the business community?
Well, like I said, growing up, I've worked just about everything you can think of. I shoveled coal, I roofed houses, and basically my pay was a roof over my head and food in my mouth because I did it for my uncles, my grandparents, and things like that. That's how I grew up. I had a very blue collar, hardworking type being raised that way. That, you know, hard work. When hard work, there's rewards for hard work. I just feel that every time Congress or even your local politicians, when they go in there and they debate and they make some sort of law or regulation, that just takes away just that much, a little bit more freedom, or there's that much more ability for you to enact as a business or even as a person. Because every time one of those things are passed, that's one more or less freedom you have, because then you have to answer to it. And I'm not about that. I'm about downsizing the government. I'm about the federal government should only really have 4 responsibilities. And that's foreign diplomacy, maintaining a strong military, maintaining a strong border, and providing protection for people from third-party interference. Other than that, the federal government shouldn't be playing into people's lives when they're dealing with a mom and pop store on the corner when they're just trying to make it in life. They shouldn't over-regulate them or create situations that just makes it harder for them to achieve the American dream. And I feel that's what I'll fight for.
Thank you. In your opinion, what is the most pressing issue facing the Southwest Florida business community? And if elected, what would you do to address this issue?
Well, it's plain as to see what the biggest issue has been over the last 6 months is the government can come in and tell you that you can't open your business without any due process. Your business is your business. You have a right to survive and live and pursue a life of liberty, happiness, and freedom. And due to a health concern, they came in and pretty much shut down perfectly good businesses that were functioning perfectly well and put them in a situation now they have to dig a hole to get back out of it. And that's a little bit overreaching. You know, then if you let the government get away with keep doing things like that, then they can use excuses for anything with health reasons, or they could say, all right, well, we need to look at your medical records now because maybe you're not physically fit to do this or do that. And they're going to use it on the grounds of health or health of protection of other people due to, you may just go to counseling for, let's say, a marriage issue, Nobody has a right to know that. There's HIPAA laws against those things. And if you let the government overreach just because they can make an excuse about public health, they're not going to stop. Okay. And that hit us smack in the face, and we all understand that. That was the biggest challenge we've had over the last 6 months. That being said, our industry here pretty much is people coming from other areas, New York, Michigan, Wisconsin, moving from the Midwest, from the Northeast. People want to end up here. This is a beautiful place to live. This is where people want to end up later along in their lives. They take their nest egg, they reinvest it down here, and they want to live the life that we're all used to living in this beautiful part of the country. And I know our water issue's always been coming up. And for the past 30 years, I can remember politicians standing in front of Lake O swearing they're going to fix this problem if you send me to Washington, D.C. And it's 30 years later, and how many politicians, and nobody's fixed anything. There's 65 to 68 projects already that have been put forth by the government to fix this Lake O problem and our drainage and the algae blooms. But it seems like the wheels just keep spinning and nothing's happening. And I don't know why, as conservatives and as Republicans, like I consider myself, and a capitalist, which America is founded on, that why don't we look the private sector to start looking at this problem and start trying to find solutions? Because I know ExxonMobil does a lot of work with algae to create biofuel. They sell fuel, they sell things like this. If the Sawney Water wants to come in and put a giant treatment plant to maintain the levels of the lake at 11 feet, and they take all the excess water and treat it and bottle it and sell it, and then we get the tax dollars back to Southwest Florida to improve our communities, I don't have a problem with that. But it seems like we always turn into liberals when it comes to this water issue, and we always turn to the government and ask, what are you going to do for us? That's not the conservative way. That's not the Republican way. What can we do for it? That's what we need to start. We start to need looking outside the box and find out other answers for these problems than always turning to the government. Now, there are projects that are out there that Congress has money set aside for. They're just sitting on it and they're not moving it with the Army Corps engineers and rewriting the manuals on what to do and how to do it. But the major problem is we have to maintain that water level at about 11 feet. We have to have enough water to release in our canals so our fishermen and our boaters can enjoy going to and from the Gulf and easily navigating through the canals. But other than that, the excess water can be used for other things. And, you know, like I said, we are a country that runs on business and business people out there willing to put their necks out and create something that's beneficial for people. And I think we should look that way also to try to help answer this problem.
Thank you. So you touched on it a little bit, but Southwest Florida's economy is obviously heavily dependent on leisure and hospitality. If elected, what would you do to encourage economic diversification?
Well, I know there's been issues lately, local issues where they're talking about people that do these private VRBOs and the hospitality community and the hotels were kind of trying to lobby against that. And I know people that have 2 or 3 properties and they do that as part of their income, you know. So I think I lost you because everything's frozen. Can you still hear me?
We can still hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. So a lot of the tax money we get is from the people coming here and vacationing and paying for their taxes and things like that. And I know it became a rift locally, was that these big hotels now are paying this tax when people come in. They had to charge this tax, but then the people in the VRBO and the people renting these privately owned houses were not putting their bill. And I know that was an issue and there was an argument about it. But I don't have a problem if somebody's willing to invest the money to buy property and is willing to go through an organization like that, and that becomes part of their income. I think they should have a right to do it just like anybody else. I think the more and more we bring here is the more and more money people will spend in the restaurants, the stores, the cafes along the water. And, you know, you can't just restrict them to only the hotels. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about water as well. So this group was formed in the wake of the 2018 water crisis, and we have kept water quality as our #1 priority. So if elected, what specific projects would you advocate for to improve and protect Southwest Florida's water quality?
Well, like I just spoke about, I mean, I think, you know, there's projects out there already in the works, and there's been money set aside, but it hasn't been released through Congress to complete these projects. I know the U.S. Army Corps engineers has been kind of shelved for the last year or so, and they're not moving on it like they should be. Now, these projects that make sense that are already in the works, I'm going to ensure that the money gets moving, you know, that we get it there, that we already promised the people of Southwest Florida. Now, that being said, but I also feel that, like I said before, we have to look at the private sector, what they can put into it, because the private sector does a lot better job than the government when it comes down to fixing things. And we can all agree on that, you know. So if I can find people out there willing to invest their hard-earned money to turn around and use this water in a different way, more power to them, because I think it'll just benefit Southwest Florida by cleaning up the issue that we have. Because the major issue is when the lake gets too full with the fertilizer runoff, it gets too full to the 11-foot level, and then we don't think the dikes can handle the water pressure, so we release it. And then when we get to the point in the rainy season and all this runoff's going in there, and we start seeing these early blooms, they release it into the canals, and that's when we start the algae blooms running from the canals down into the Gulf and going the opposite direction into the Atlantic. And So if we can maintain the water level, that's the most important thing. Then we don't have to release the water. We can release water slowly just to maintain levels in the canals for navigation purposes. Because the people still want to use their boating. You know, we could just say, all right, we're not going to release any water, let it all run into Everglades. But then all the boaters will be mad at everybody because they can't navigate through the canals. They bought property along the canals and they can't get their boat down because it's too shallow. So it's a fine balance, and we have to work on that balance to make everybody happy. And, you know, there's no utopia. We must understand that. But we're going to do the best we can to get the closest we can to that.
Great. What specific actions do you think lawmakers should take to improve and protect Southwest Florida's waterways?
Well, I know Lee County on a local level has after certain, I think June 1st, they do the no fertilizer without the certain chemicals in it that harm our water. And they're not allowed to use it during the rainy season due to the heavy runoff. And I don't have a problem with Big Sugar. I'm not going to ever like I've told everybody, I'm not going to take money from any large industry like that as a congressman. I refuse to. I represent the people, so I'm going to represent the people's voice. I'm not going to have to be enslaved to anybody else other than the people. Now, if the government wants to come down, the state of Florida wants to come down on Big Sugar and say, all right, you got to use all organic fertilizers or something like that, then if they're forced to do that, but then you got to understand the consumer is going to pay more for sugar. It's all consumer-run industry. If we could stop this tomorrow, if everybody just quit using sugar. But guess what? Texas is not going to quit using sugar. Louisiana is not going to quit. California is not going to quit. All right? And they don't really care about our water problem, to be honest. Now, there was an issue in Southern California. I don't think a lot of people know about it. It's called the Salton Lake. It was the largest freshwater lake in California. And in the 50s, they had a similar issue. The salt water got so high that it was killing off the fish. It was killing off their vacation industry around the lake. It was in Southern California. It was close to the Mexican border. And they brought private industry in to help them out. Believe it or not, Morton Salt came in and started filtering the salt out of the water and was using it and things of that nature. And it alleviated the problem. It's a good read to look at it, and maybe we can learn something from it. But it's good to learn from other people's mistakes or solutions and then try and always come up with our own. Because sometimes there's an answer already out there. We just have to look for it. But I mean, that's pretty much in a nutshell. We got to have a complete balance here. And like I said, if sugar's got to use different fertilizer and stuff like that, and we're willing to pay more for our sugar, and then let it be, then it'll alleviate probably part of the problem. So.
Thank you. So one last question. Is there anything else you'd like us to know about you and your priorities?
Well, I'm pretty much on the line with a lot of the conservative beliefs. I'm a big Second Amendment supporter. I believe life begins at conception. And like I said, I'm all about smaller federal government. I mean, I don't think the EPA had an issue at one point, or had a responsibility at one point early on in the 70s when some people were decimating some of the wetlands and things like that. And it was actually, I believe, believe it or not, the history of the EPA was because of Mr. Disney and the land grab he was doing, and the government stepped in and tried to slow them down a little bit. But that's how it all came to birth. But every year after that, the EPA has to find a new issue to justify their being. And I think sometimes they overreach and they overstep, and it hurts business. So organizations like that, I think, probably could be downsized, and that would help with our deficit over time. I'm a big supporter of veterans due to being a veteran and a lot of family members being veterans. And I really want to try to help the health situation the veterans have with the Veterans Administration. It's definitely broken. I know President Trump did some things that, you know, helped a little bit, but it hasn't gone far enough. And I truly believe we should privatize the Veterans Administration, especially when it comes to the healthcare part of it. They'd get much better service and quicker and easier. We'd probably save money in the long run, because some of the real estate that the Veterans Administration owns in some of the highest real estate markets in the country. And they could probably sell those hospitals off to private hospitals. Then you would have a hospital within a community never had a hospital before that has access for their children and the elderly. because it would now become a community hospital, and the veterans would just basically be issued a credit card to pay for all their medical bills. They just walk in, slap it down, get their treatment, and walk out. So in the long run, that's some of the things I'm looking into. And like I said, you just have to free the people. The people know what they want to do, especially business, especially small business people, because if they're successful, they evidently had the right formula to get to that point. And they don't need somebody regulating or telling them how to run their business. They just need somebody to run interference for them. But let that happen, without any outside influence or outside blockage from the government, for sure. So those are some things that's very important to me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your ideas and your beliefs with us. And thanks for taking the time to talk with us. And we wish you luck in the election.
Well, thank you very much. Thank all of you for inviting me, and I enjoyed
Thank you.
this. Thank you.
Thank you.